In the year 2102, the United Earth government is under a state of siege from the forces of the Dark Axis. Led by the evil dictator Venkar Aman, the Axis forces have waged a bloody 3-year war against Earth. Now, only a handful of warriors remain in defense of free Earth. Equipped with advanced robotic combat suits, these valiant few are known as the Title Drop Metal Warriors. Hello everyone, and welcome to a game I only found relatively recently, actually. Let's just get right on into it, shall we? Primary systems engaged. All secondaries are green. Ready for launch. Well, that was impressive for Super Nintendo. Mind you, this is late Super Nintendo, so I guess it's no surprise. Locate Ancient Marissa and get out as fast as you can. Alright, starting off, we are in the Nitro mech, and this thing is, the closest thing I can compare it to is honestly just straight up a Gundam in terms of control for those who have played certain Gundam games. The A button is your melee attack, which is a little beam sword. It has a couple different slash attacks, like there's a little stab you can do and such, and it all depends on the directional input you're pressing while you press the A button. The main method of attack, though, is through the Y button, which is your various laser attacks. There are certain upgrades you can get to it throughout the game, located in little boxes like the one I just destroyed there, which contain the various power-ups in the game. What I just got there is health. I'll go over health in a second. You can aim your gun in any direction, really. However, you can only do it by pressing up and down relative to where you are. So if I wanted to aim slightly down, I would need to slowly tap the down button on the D-pad until it rotated correctly. There's only a few angles you can hit, like I think you can hit maybe 10 or so angles, maybe a bit more than that, but it is worth noting all the same. X is your specific, your suit-specific attack. In this case, with the Nitro, it's a little defensive shield you can drop in any place. I don't use shields that much, though, because I always forget about them. Shields have their own button natively for every suit, though, and that is through the R button. The L button is what you use sub-weapons with. Like, right now, I have this missile launcher that I got a bit earlier. Missile launchers are probably one of the most powerful things in the game, but you won't see me using sub-weapons all too relatively. This here is another suit. This is the Spider. This can crawl along walls, can shoot in about the same amount of directions. Its melee attack is it's fisting. It's forcing its face forward. Though its jump, I think, is the worst in the game, barring one. And jumping in this game is the B button. Some suits have flight to them of sorts, just like the Nitro does, where if you hold the B button, you obviously get the thrusters going on and such, and that is very useful. But overall, I'll be doing things. Melee attacks are very good up close, by the way, just because they do more than one hit. They usually, I don't think it's frame specific, but it definitely feels like it. I'm going to be basically using every single suit throughout the game just to show it off, though this is, I think, the only time I use the Spider mech, just because I don't like it too much. I forget if this thing's actually called the Spider. Every suit has a name, but I just outright forget this one. Its spread fire is admittedly useful, though, as is the fact you can just aim in any direction to get things like this cannon ahead of time. The health system in this game is a bit odd for first-timers, though. Your health doesn't have a specific bar on screen. Instead, it's dictated by how bright your colors are. When your health is fresh, you're bright red, you look great and such, but the more you get damaged, the more dulled down in saturation and color the red gets. Like right now, we are much more mid-tier red than completely bright. It gets to the point where you're almost completely gray, and then one of two things will happen. A little spark will start going off on the back of your mech, which indicates you can no longer use sub-weapons, any ones that you had on are then destroyed. And then again, by you losing your ability, in most cases, to just use any weapon at all. If you don't get out at that point, I believe there's even like a little vocal cue in the game. I'll go like red alert, even though it's kind of hard to hear over some of the other sound effects sometimes due to the fact that I think it uses the same channel as your standard shots. And I'm almost always firing in this game, so yikes. If you don't get out of the mech in time by pressing the select button, you will die, because death in the mech is death in general. If you die, you can still die outside the mech though. Although it's much easier but also harder to do. Whenever you're outside the mech, you obviously are smaller, and most mech suits won't outright target you, especially earlier on in the game. It's only usually the standard humans that will target you. But you have a separate health bar. I believe you start with 9 hit points in that form with every single stage, I guess life technically. And how you can tell how much health you have left is when you get hit. Say if I was in human form right now and I got hit by something, I would probably go down to 8. The number 8 or 9 would jump above my head. That's how many hit points I have left. I think you take a total of 10 shots, but don't quote me on that because sometimes it's a bit iffy. What I have right now is the level 3 gun. This will eat through just about any single platform you can shoot through, because the way you're supposed to progress through a lot of stages of this game is shooting through platforms in order to actually restore sections as paths. Thanks for the rescue. Now let's get out of here. Quick. Now, I'd go over the story and more specific, but honestly, that's a bit rough because this is one of those Super Nintendo games where despite my various searches on the net, I cannot for the life of me find a PDF of the manual. In fact, even the manual project doesn't have it, which is not a good sign. Either way, time for another cutscene, which these are just fantastic for Super Nintendo standards. I want to congratulate Lieutenant Stone for the fine job you did at Axis 5. Axis forces are still unaware of our presence. This gives us an advantage. Our mission today is to capture intact a fully loaded Axis supply ship. 3 Nitro units will board the ship and capture its command bridge. Supplies on board that ship will strengthen our forces significantly. Mission 2, by and large, sort of serves as a tutorial. Good luck, Stone. Sort of acts as a tutorial for your human form because you're using it a lot more in this stage than you did in Mission 1. Mission 1's more of a general introduction. Though, notably, there is a tutorial mode in the game's options for every specific mech, so if you want to get some practice in, you can there. As well, there's also a name change option. Obviously, the people throughout this game will refer to my character as Lieutenant Stone, but that's the default name. You can change it to anything, and that's really cool. Now, I found this game, let's see, it's currently February 27th of 2019. I found this game about 3 months ago or so, somewhere in that range. Because I was just kind of looking around for games to try out and play, and I found this one, and I kind of fell in love pretty quickly. For those who know me, they already know this, but I love robot stuff. Gundam, Mega Man, so on and so forth. I love a lot of stuff that has robots in it. And just how Gundam meets Star Wars this was appealed to me greatly. In a way, it very specifically reminds me a good bit of, what's it called? Zeta Gundam plot-wise for reasons, as well visually, just due to some of the more heavier tech, kind of. I guess real robot is the term a lot of people would use for it. In a way, it reminds me a bit more of Gundam 00. At least, barring the Gundams in that series, because Celestial Being was otherworldly, especially in the first season. Now, there are a few other different power-ups you can get from the item boxes. We've seen health, we've seen missile launchers, but some other sub-weapons is a very short-lived grenade launcher. This thing, which outright reverses gravity on your ship for a little bit, your bot for a little bit. And this mostly comes in handy during the last couple of stages for some reasons. There's also levels 1, 2, and 4, which raise the power and change the way your shot works, respectively. Like, in terms of scattering, in terms of damage, all that jazz. There is a B moniker, which is a bounce shot, which causes your shots to bounce all over the place. And the S, which is the seeker shot, which causes your shots to home in on enemies. That one's more useful than bounce. And that's all you need to do at the end, by the way. Just run to the end, because you can't get to that passageway as the Nitro, or any other bot in the game, rather. Every robot in the game is considered 3 tiles large. Anything that's 2 tiles or smaller, you can't get through. Our mission today is of the utmost importance. The agent we rescued from Axis 5 gave us the location of an enemy supply base. The base is located on a heavily shielded asteroid. Our ship will knock out the base's shields. Lieutenant Stone's group will secure the base after the shields are down. Good luck, Stone. Alright, level 3 is where the game starts to pick up in difficulty, a bit more so just due to complexity. Although, really quick, I should mention, at the start of every level you might see a minor jump cut. What that is me refreshing the recording, because like with a lot of my LPs, as usual, 1 level per recording session, just so I can make sure I played that level as well as I could, so on and so forth. And that was for a very specific reason in this game's case, because if you get to a certain point in the game without dying, you get a certain bonus, and I want to show that off. Now, the first thing I want to do in this level is come outside to take care of all the enemies out here, not only because there's a nice little bonus for me out here, but that'll cause the later portions of the level to be a bit easier. Also, landmines are kind of hard to hit in this game because of how specific you have to be with the Nitro, at least. Now, what little information I could find about this game, because there isn't too much compared to some other games that I've played for the channel out there, I mostly just found through this game's Wikipedia page. For instance, as you saw at the beginning of the part, this was developed by LucasArts. In particular, though, it was a certain subset of LucasArts, one known for making the game called Zombies Ate My Neighbors. In fact, this even runs on the exact same engine as Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which led to this game apparently getting approved pretty quickly by the studio. They had some other plans for it, but they just never really got through to it. And according to one of the game's heads, Mike Ebert, this game was originally going to be published by Nintendo on the Super Nintendo, but because the PlayStation was already out by this point, because this was, like, I think, first third of 95, as well as the decrease of desire for Super Nintendo games, the game ended up, that deal with Nintendo ended up falling through. And I think it was just published by Konami because of that. The 2 main people of this game, Mike Ebert and one of the lead programmers, Dean Sharp, also later went on to make their own game studio. Big Ape Studios, and we'll go over that in a moment because we actually have a new mech to talk about here. This over here is the Havoc. And I don't go for it immediately off the bat just because I have some other things I want to do with the Nitro first. But the interesting about the Havoc is that it can't fly. It only just has a pretty high jump. The benefit to that, though, is that it comes with a couple of other bells and whistles. First off, it automatically comes with the spread shot, so you'll be able to get more of a range with your shots right off the bat, which is always kind of cool. It also comes instead of a little drop shield, it has a sort of a boost function where it increases your ground speed, and it'll also, if you, say, get to the end of a platform, get a bit of a leap off of it. And that can be pretty useful, especially for just moving quickly outright. The melee attack is also pretty useful, though it has a bit of a longer wind-up animation, so you can take some more damage during it because of that. The Havoc is probably the one you'll see me using the second most throughout the playthrough, just because since it's basically the Axis main suit, think the Zaku's from Gundam, It's just the most common in the game to find from my memory. There's one other that's also pretty common, and we'll see that later in this stage. These cannons are kind of annoying for early game just due to the amount of health they have. You'll also see me in the early stages kind of wandering around a bit more because I always try to see if there's stuff I've missed in these earlier levels. Just because of how easy the first third of the game is compared to the latter two-thirds even, I venture around a bit more just because... Or no, a bit more in those later levels, rather. Just because I need supplies more often. In the earlier levels, I just went right through it. My first playthrough, so here I'm exploring a bit more than I probably should be, that's on me. These cannons, though, can be damaging if you're not effectively using your shields. Shields are very good in this game, particularly with the Nitro and the Havoc. Certain other suits in the game, they're not too good, particularly one we see later in this stage. I think only works on certain types of chests to begin with. But we'll go over that when we cross that bridge. Either way, the company that those two people from LucasArts developed this game would later go on to found was Big Ape Productions, and they did, I think, at least one game of note. Let me see if I can get that up. Notable, whenever you're shooting people in your out-of-mech form... Oh god, he got my Nitro. Be careful with that. Enemies can snag suits you can snag, and then they become deadly due to that. Suits will usually kill your character in 1 to 2 shots, so be careful. As I was saying, when it comes to people on the field that you can shoot, if they're dressed in white, that means they're just like a general scientist. They won't fight back. However, if they're wearing blue or red, that is a soldier. Be careful, they will shoot you. And depending on the one it is and what they're doing, they can actually damage your mech too. Their standard bullets won't do much, if anything, to them. But if they're firing, say, from like a rocket launcher or a grenade, that will do some damage to you. Let's see. Big Ape Company, Big Ape Productions, did MTV Celebrity Deathmatch on the PlayStation 2 and 1. I don't know how good that game was. The Simpsons Wrestling, which, oh boy, Flanders, I think it was broken in that. Good work, Stone. You've captured the Central Power Core. An enemy ship is dropping space armor into the base. Don't let them destroy the core generators. I'll go more over that in a second. They also did Star Wars Phantom Menace for PlayStation. Oh god, that game is kinds of awful. As well as Herc's Adventures, which I heard was a pretty good kind of Zelda clone. By the way, during this section, various enemy suits are going to enter this core room and start shooting at the cores. They're destroying the core generators. You've got to stop them. However, since you don't get graded on the mission, what you can do, and what I do a lot of the time, is just stay to the bottom of this area. Let them destroy basically every core but these last two, and then let them start focusing on these last two. Because they all have to come down here anyway to attack them, and they never attack you and the cores at the same time, you can just bait them down here with these last two cores and take care of them no problem. It doesn't help as well that if you have a Havoc, it's very hard to get back up, because since the Havoc can't fly, you have to rely on the center of the cores to be platforms, and since that's such a narrow platform to stand on, it just isn't really worth it in the long run. And plus, the Havoc's jump controls a bit stiffly from left to right. At least as long as you're more committed to your jumps with the Havoc than some of the other suits. More accurate, I guess, is the way I can phrase it. This over here is the third type of suit in the game, the Prometheus. This is your tank. Good work, Lieutenant Stone. You've saved the power core. Now get to the hangar and stop that enemy dropship. The Prometheus is slow, and it cannot jump at all. However, what it has is a main tank bullet you can shoot outwards, and when it either makes contact with something, or if you let go of the attack button, because you have to hold down with the main fire, it'll split off in 8 directions with standard bullets. Its X attack is aerial mines, which do a lot of damage. In fact, they're very good in the rare boss fight in this game. You can use them in. Its melee attack is a flamethrower, which is a melee attack. It's powerful, but it's not the most useful. And it can aim as usual. I don't think it can aim straight down, though. It also has one other weird bonus attack. That's more of just a bonus of ability, rather. Since it can't jump, the way they mitigate that is if you ever need to walk over a gap in platforms, if you press the B button, I think it is. Yeah, it should be the B button. You just generate platforms and they go there, which, cool. Disable the gun turrets and see if you can make this ship, return the ship intact. Alright, this is the sort of boss fight for this stage. Just walk up to every single cannon and use the flamethrower. This is why I went back at the beginning of the stage to destroy the mech suits in this area, because then I won't have to deal with them firing on my Prometheus at this specific phase. Once you take care of all those, the ship starts moving. Stops moving, I think. And then you can just walk through the area. And when you get to the ship comm at the end, you're gonna take control of the ship yourself. Great job, Lieutenant Stone. Now bring the ship back into the hangar. And then just hold right until you win. There is no other threat at this point. The enemies don't start attacking their own drop ship. You are good. At this point, you've won. This stage has its annoyances, particularly because you have to get used to a couple suits for the first time, more than likely. But with the Havoc and Prometheus in particular, you want to master them now because you're going to be using them a lot. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we'll be entering Mission 4 and seeing what lies beyond that. See you guys then.